The evening deepens, allowing a profound question to emerge with the gentle curl of smoke from the hearth. Within the softly lit chamber, the coals offer a faint, persistent glow, and in their warm, orange shimmer, one senses the profound weight of an inquiry that feels older than the very stones comprising the walls. What if the narrative meticulously woven for centuries was merely a fragment, a carefully edited version of a much grander saga? What if the cross, often perceived as the definitive conclusion, served instead as an elaborate veil, concealing a truth far more enduring? What if a sacred bloodline, rather than being extinguished, continued its clandestine journey, not merely through the relentless march of time, but across vast, tumultuous oceans, secreted away in hidden vessels, shrouded in an impenetrable silence, and protected by solemn oaths too formidable to ever be uttered aloud? The air carries the subtle, comforting aroma of charred oak, the sweet resin from the hearth, and perhaps, for those who allow their imagination to stretch its boundaries, a faint, almost ethereal trace of myrrh, that ancient, precious perfume once cradled alongside an infant king. Shadows, long and sinuous, stretch across the walls, appearing to coalesce as if they too are complicit, leaning ever closer to absorb every whispered word. Within this hushed, intimate circle, a daring query is posed, one that challenges the very foundations of accepted history. Could it be that the descendants of Jesus Christ walked the earth, not as figures of myth or legend, but as tangible beings of flesh and bone? Certain historians, staunch guardians of the established narrative, dismiss such a notion with a dismissive frown, asserting unequivocally that the Gospels provide a definitive closure, that biological lineages simply do not endure crucifixion. They exhibit a clear preference for manuscripts that are impeccably ordered, their margins pristine and entirely free from the unsettling stain of scandal or radical reinterpretation. And yet, a quiet, uneasy dissent persists among others, who cautiously suggest that significant gaps in the historical record remain, and that silence itself, when prolonged and profound, can be deeply suspicious. After all, the tapestry of history is not a monolithic stone wall, but rather a complex patchwork replete with missing bricks. What if one of these conspicuous absences is not merely an accident of time, but a deliberate, intricate design? It is a well-established historical fact that the Knights Templar were formally established in 1119, a dedicated fraternity of 9 men bound by solemn vows to safeguard pilgrims journeying to Jerusalem. This account is the mainstream record, meticulously etched into countless chronicles and scholarly texts. However, beneath the official lines, another, more tantalizing suggestion quietly circulates: that their excavations were not solely for the protection of the faithful, but for something far more profound and hidden beneath the hallowed ground of the Temple of Solomon. Perhaps it was gold, or sacred relics, or even, most controversially, ancient genealogies of immense significance. A particularly austere scholar once observed that such theories were a mere luxury for the imaginative, which, upon careful consideration, emerges as an elegantly crafted admission that he possessed no definitive means to disprove them. The subtle creak of old wood beneath one's feet seems to resonate with the echoes of time, as though these very floorboards retain memories far older and more profound than they are permitted to openly reveal. In some enduring tales, the Knights Templar are said to have transported precious parchments to distant, secluded locations, far beyond the vigilant scrutiny of papal authority. There are even persistent claims, alternately dismissed as wild speculation and cautiously defended by a select few, that detailed maps of Western lands existed long before the voyages of Columbus, carefully entrusted to the hands of individuals who valued absolute silence above any fleeting renown or public acclaim. Some historians continue to engage in fierce debate over whether the ancient Norse sagas, particularly those detailing Vinland, represent reliable historical accounts, or are merely poetic tales spun to entertain within the warmth of communal halls. Yet poetry itself, as becomes evident through such profound inquiries, frequently encapsulates truths that prove far more resilient and enduring than the strictest letter of the law. Imagine, for a fleeting moment, a battle-hardened knight, traces of soot still clinging to his beard, slipping silently into a secluded chapel at the first blush of dawn. He bows with reverence before the ancient altar, yet concealed within the sleeve of his habit, meticulously folded, rests a genealogy of unparalleled significance. Names which, if brought into the light of public knowledge, would undoubtedly unsettle the foundations of established thrones and cause entire crowns to topple from their positions of power. He murmurs a prayer, perhaps half of it born of ingrained habit, the other half a potent form of insurance. Indeed, one could never exercise too much caution when the very cargo one carries is nothing less than eternity itself. A faint, knowing smile might appear at such a thought. After all, what conceivable need could knights, sworn to a life of profound poverty, have for so many elaborate treasure chests? Certainly their contents could not have been mere coin. Perhaps secrets, in their profound and elusive nature, are the only true form of wealth that remains immune to the corrosive touch of rust. And yet, paradoxically, secrets also represent the only currency capable of utterly bankrupting an individual the precise moment they are finally spent. The fire within the hearth crackles sharply, sending a solitary spark arcing into the dimness. It hangs suspended for a fleeting instant, a tiny golden beacon, before extinguishing itself, a stark reminder of the ephemeral nature of revelations, how swiftly they can flare into existence and just as quickly fade away. This evening, the exploration turns away from the official chronicles and their carefully inked narratives, choosing instead to delve into the margins, the subtle stains, and the tantalizingly erased lines where the imagination is permitted to roam freely. For it is often within the ashes of forgotten histories that the faint, yet unmistakable outline of a profoundly different story begins to glow. Perhaps the entire premise amounts to nothing more than speculation. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it encompasses everything. Should a sacred bloodline have indeed traversed the vast expanse of the sea, it might have done so under the most unassuming of guises, not as heralded kings, but as humble farmers, industrious merchants, or even as defiant rebels who chose to raise barns rather than banners. Would it not be precisely in history's cunning nature to cloak its most dangerously significant heirs in the plainest, most unremarkable attire? And so, as the hour grows increasingly quiet and the glowing coals dim further, the profound question is held close. It does not demand an immediate answer this evening. It merely requests to be whispered into the encroaching darkness. What if the line did not truly end? The night deepens, and with it, the shadows on the walls grow longer and more pronounced. An almost imperceptible leaning forward occurs, as though what is to be revealed next is intended not for the wide world, but solely for those present in this intimate circle. The profound question has been posed, and now the intriguing trail truly begins. A journey through faded ink and ancient parchment, through maps that, by all conventional understanding, should not exist, and through detailed drawings of lands that lie far beyond the neatly defined edges of medieval geographical knowledge. Picture, if one can, a subterranean chamber nestled deep beneath the ancient city of Jerusalem, where the very stones themselves are damp with the moisture of centuries of prayer and an almost palpable silence. The year is the 12th century. The Knights Templar, those enigmatic warriors bound by austere vows of poverty, yet possessing coffers richer than many kings, are engaged in a relentless excavation within the dust-laden earth where Solomon's temple once majestically stood. Historical records factually confirm their occupation of this sacred site for nearly a decade, specifically from 1119 until approximately 1129. Officially, their solemn duty was the protection of pilgrims. Unofficially, however, rumors swirl with the ethereal grace of incense smoke, suggesting far deeper motives. Some whispered that they sought precious relics, others believed they unearthed ancient manuscripts, and a select few dared to murmur of scrolls containing maps whose intricate details reached far beyond the fabled Pillars of Hercules. Herein lies the crux of the scholarly dispute. Did the Knights Templar truly unearth knowledge pertaining to lands situated across the vast expanse of the Western Sea? Mainstream historians typically greet such propositions with a polite yet unmistakable roll of the eyes. They steadfastly insist that the true age of discovery commenced centuries later, propelled by the intrepid Portuguese caravels and the formidable Spanish crowns. And yet, the fringe element of historical inquiry persists, pointing to a scattered yet compelling collection of ancient maps that appear to possess an unsettling amount of information far too soon for their supposed creation dates. These include coastlines meticulously drawn long before official explorers ever claimed them, and shapes uncannily resembling continents not yet discovered by the European powers. Are these mere coincidences, or are they profound echoes of a secret knowledge carefully guarded and clandestinely carried through the ages? A particular map immediately springs to mind: the enigmatic Vineland charts, widely alleged to be medieval renderings of America's distant shores. Some scholars are quick to dismiss them as exceptionally clever forgeries, while others vehemently argue that their intricate detail simply could not have been invented without direct, eyewitness observation. Cartography, one esteemed professor once declared in a lecture, is a science of accuracy, not of wild imagination. One might, however, suspect that such a professor had never truly delved into the whimsical marginalia of a medieval monk who, with earnest conviction, depicted whales larger than ships, and yet was still taken with utmost seriousness by his contemporaries. The subtle, evocative scent of vellum seems to fill the mind, dry, earthy, and imbued with the faint oil of hands that vanished into history long ago. One can almost vividly imagine a Templar, cloaked in the shadows, carefully unrolling such a parchment by the flickering, uncertain light of a torch. A coastline, meticulously traced in faded brown ink, comes into view. Perhaps it is merely the familiar edge of Ireland, or perhaps, just perhaps, it is something far more extraordinary, a jagged, unfamiliar shore, impossibly wide, stretching endlessly, reaching out into the vast, unknown Atlantic. He stares at it, his mind wrestling with the profound uncertainty of belief. Maps, after all, are simultaneously promises of discovery and intricate riddles begging to be solved. The irony of the situation resonates deeply. An order born in the sacred lands of the East, sworn to protect the Holy Sepulchre, may have found themselves gazing westward, towards lands whose existence they could never, under any circumstances, speak of aloud. Imagine the sheer audacity of presenting such a chart to the Pope himself, he who already harbored a profound mistrust of the Templars' inherent secrecy. Would he have denounced it as a dangerous heresy, or perhaps even worse, as a direct challenge to his authority, a form of intellectual competition? Some theories provocatively suggest that the Templars, facing an existential threat, chose strategic exile over catastrophic exposure, their silence a protective cloak far thicker and more impenetrable than any chainmail. And within this very narrative, a subtle dark humor emerges. Medieval monks, meticulously drawing fantastical dragons on the uncharted seas of their maps, diligently inscribing the chilling warning, "Here be monsters." Yet perhaps the true, most terrifying monster was not a mythical sea beast, but the paradigm-shattering possibility of an entire unknown continent patiently waiting beyond their tightly circumscribed horizon. One can almost conjure the ghost of a knight's dry chuckle as he wryly observes the profound irony. A beast to the west, it seems, is far preferable to the beasts to our east. History, in its grand unfolding drama, has never truly lacked a sharp, incisive sarcasm. In imagination, fingers trace across those faded lines, feeling the subtle grain of the vellum where a quill once pressed with determined force. Could these enigmatic maps have been the nascent seeds of ambitious voyages undertaken long before the official era of Columbus? Some historians continue to argue fiercely over whether the ancient Norse sagas of Vinland provide genuine, verifiable accounts of transatlantic crossings, or if they are merely elaborate tales spun to warm the halls of chieftains during long, dark winters. And yet, weathered, rune-marked stones discovered in Newfoundland still stand, silently teasing with their undeniable presence, refusing to be easily dismissed. Thus, the compelling theory lingers that the Knights Templar, following their dramatic and brutal fall in 1307, carried not merely gold and precious relics aboard their fleeing ships, but something far more invaluable: profound knowledge, meticulously drawn maps, precise coordinates, and intricate instructions whispered only in code. Perhaps these were the last, true treasures of the temple, not jeweled chalices or sacred crosses, but a definitive direction, a beckoning horizon, a silent promise that somewhere, far beyond the tumultuous waves, lay an ultimate sanctuary. And here, the powerful image returns with renewed clarity. A solitary knight at the break of dawn, his gaze fixed westward from the deck of a ship, clutching a rolled parchment tightly to his chest. His beard is now salted with the fine spray of the sea. His eyes are fixed not upon the rising sun itself, but upon the profound darkness it leaves in its wake. He remains uncertain whether the distant land is real, a tangible destination, but he knows, with an absolute certainty, that this map is all he has left, his sole remaining guide. Sometimes, true faith resides not in the hallowed words of Scripture, but in the indelible lines of ink. The fire within the chamber sighs, its embers settling into a calmer glow. One might also lean back, breathing in that soft, lingering smoke. A map, after all, is ultimately just an invitation. The true journey, the profound adventure, lies entirely in whether one possesses the courage to follow. The night deepens further, and in the collective imagination, sails begin to billow and swell. One can almost distinctly hear the mournful moan of the rigging, the rhythmic slap of canvas against the wind, and the deep, resonant creak of hulls heavy with a cargo far more significant than mere timber. The profound question of these mysterious maps leads, with an undeniable logic, to the vast, open sea, and to the ships that may have carried not only immense treasure, but also an astonishing, paradigm-shifting truth. The undeniable fact remains, on Friday the 13th of October, 1307, King Philip IV of France issued a sweeping order for the arrest of all Knights Templar within his domain. Their revered leaders were summarily seized, and their vast wealth was officially confiscated, or so the meticulously crafted official record vehemently claims. Yet, the persistent legend insists upon a different, more clandestine narrative. At the bustling port of La Rochelle, numerous witnesses spoke of a fleet of Templar ships, slipping silently away under the dense, concealing shroud of an early morning fog. Some historical scholars contend that these accounts are mere exaggerations, akin to a medieval form of casual conversation or speculative rumor, simply serving to fill the void of the unknown. However, a significant number of other historians point to the undeniable fact that the Knights Templar commanded an imposing naval fleet, an exceedingly rare and powerful asset for a monastic order. The crucial question then arises: what became of this formidable armada? The vast, indifferent ocean, it is often observed, conceals secrets and devours evidence with far greater efficiency than any destructive conflagration. This predicament marks one of the most enduring and captivating historical controversies. Speculation abounds regarding the fleet's intended destination. Could the vessels have been charting a course for Scotland, a realm where King Robert the Bruce found himself excommunicated by the Church and desperately in need of powerful, unconventional allies? Or did these ships embark on an even more audacious voyage, pushing further still across an immense, uncharted ocean that only a select few in that era dared to contemplate traversing? The more conventional academic perspectives tend to dismiss such notions as inherently fanciful, often underscoring the formidable navigational and logistical challenges inherent in maritime travel during the 14th century. Yet, a cadre of fringe historians consistently reminds us that the intrepid Norsemen had successfully navigated and crossed those very same treacherous waters many centuries prior, leaving behind a rich legacy of sagas and archaeological ruins as testament to their transatlantic feats. If a sturdy Viking longship possessed the capability to achieve such a crossing, they logically posit, then why should a technologically advanced Templar galley be deemed incapable? In the theater of our collective imagination, the very air seems to carry a briny tang, a pungent aroma of the sea. We can almost perceive the distinct scents of tar, the viscous pitch, and the damp, swelling fibers of hemp ropes. Lanterns, suspended from tall masts, sway rhythmically, casting an ethereal dance of shifting, luminous halos across the pallid, taut faces of the anxious crew, each etched with a mixture of fear and grim determination. Concealed somewhere deep within the ship's bowels, perhaps, a robust chest might be found securely wedged amidst tightly packed barrels of grain. Its contents, however, are not imagined to be mundane coinage, Such a treasure would be excessively heavy and conspicuously obvious. Instead, it is theorized to hold far more precious and esoteric items, sacred relics, ancient parchments, vital names, and meticulously preserved lineages, secrets deemed far more valuable than mere gold. One of these very lineages, should these whispered theories indeed carry any substantial weight, might conceivably trace its origins back to a humble carpenter's son, a figure who once traversed the sun-drenched, dusty roads of ancient Galilee. It strikes one as profoundly poetic, almost an act of historical irony, that the venerable guardians of such a hallowed bloodline might ultimately choose to entrust its profound secret to the vast, inscrutable sea, arguably the most merciless and unforgiving guardian imaginable. One cannot help but acknowledge the profound irony inherent in this scenario. These were men, formidable knights, who had valiantly engaged in fierce combat against Saracen warriors and confronted powerful European monarchs, now reduced to a desperate, silent negotiation with the capricious whims of ocean waves and the unpredictable force of the wind. A seasoned knight was expertly trained to parry the thrust of a sword or deflect an arrow, but against the overwhelming elemental fury of a tempest, what recourse remained? Perhaps their only solace, their sole act of defiance, was to offer fervent prayers that the precious bloodline they meticulously carried aboard their vessels might prove to be more inherently buoyant, more resistant to sinking, than their own mortal bones. Some historical conjectures propose that the ships ultimately found safe harbor in Portugal, a realm where surviving Templar members are believed to have quietly integrated into the nascent Order of Christ. This successor order, it is further suggested, later played a pivotal, guiding role in the Age of Discovery, nurturing and supporting legendary navigators such as Prince Henry the Navigator. Conversely, other hushed whispers suggest a far more adventurous trajectory, that the fleet embarked on an audacious westward journey, gradually vanishing into the immense, uncharted expanse of the Atlantic. There even exists a curious local legend, a narrative woven equally from jest and prophecy, recounting a Newfoundland fisherman who, generations ago, purportedly swore he discovered a distinct cross carved into the face of a coastal cliff. Though weathered by time, its form remained unequivocally recognizable. His pragmatic wife, however, remained thoroughly unimpressed by his extraordinary claim, curtly dismissing it as nothing more than a natural fissure in the rock. Marriages, it seems, are often far less accommodating or forgiving of grand, sweeping legends than individual imaginations. The academic community, as is their customary practice, engages in fervent debate over these matters. Some scholars passionately argue that the Templar fleet was never, in fact, of such an imposing size or significant scale to begin with. Others, conversely, insist that its complete and utter disappearance is far too conveniently neat to be casually dismissed as mere happenstance. A particularly dry and cynical academic once famously penned the assertion that the absence of records does not imply the presence of secrets, a statement that, while initially sounding remarkably astute and clever, reveals its own inherent irony when one considers that it also presents the most perfectly crafted logical framework within which to successfully conceal them. We allow ourselves to close our eyes and vividly imagine the breaking of a new dawn. A solemn line of ships silently drifts towards the distant horizon, their majestic sails emblazoned with the distinctive red cross, their sturdy prows relentlessly biting into the formidable gray swells of the untamed Atlantic. Behind them, the Kingdom of France smolders with the bitter embers of suspicion, betrayal, and relentless persecution. Ahead, there awaits nothing but the impenetrable, shrouding embrace of an endless fog. Somewhere within the hidden depths of those very holds, perhaps, lies secreted the most perilous enigma of all, not glittering gold, nor invaluable maps, but rather the very continuation of a sacred bloodline. A lineage so potent and so dangerous that no reigning crown in Europe dared, or even desired, to publicly acknowledge its existence. The ancient timbers of the vessels groan under the strain, gulls circle overhead in mournful arcs, and the wind, as if by some divine intervention, catches their sails precisely right. The entire fleet, with this final decisive act, slips irrevocably into the realm of legend, and history, with a polite and convenient shrug, deliberately turns its gaze in another direction. But we, in this timeless moment, remain awake, and we perceive them still. The faint, rhythmic echo of oars dipping into the vastness, the slow, almost imperceptible whisper of phantom ships receding at the very edge of an imagined dawn. The fire now burns with a diminished glow, its flames dancing lower, and the hour seems to stretch, to slow, as if time itself is leaning in, drawing closer to intently listen. We have, in our minds, followed ancient maps and phantom ships across boundless oceans, and now, in this extended imaginative journey, our feet crunch audibly upon the unfamiliar granular texture of distant foreign sand. The very atmosphere here feels distinctively different. The sharp tang of salt air commingles with the resinous fragrance of pine, creating a unique olfactory signature. This is a shoreline entirely unlike the familiar Mediterranean coasts that the Knights Templar would have known intimately in their former lives. Did they, in actual fact, truly arrive on these distant shores? That, indeed, remains the central, tantalizing riddle. Tonight, we walk with a hushed reverence along these long-forgotten coastlines, silently posing the profound question of whether their sturdy boots ever pressed into this virgin soil, a place where no official chronicler or meticulous historian ever thought to follow. Mainstream historians, as one might anticipate, steadfastly insist that such an idea is utterly fanciful. No tangible evidence, they repeatedly assert, articulating their position with the unwavering certainty characteristic of individuals who prefer their meticulously maintained archives to be impeccably neat and entirely devoid of inconvenient anomalies. Yet, etched into the ancient stones of New England, curious and enigmatic carvings persistently linger. These petroglyphs, some impassioned observers solemnly swear, undeniably bear the distinct shape of crosses, not the crude, hastily marked symbols of desperate shipwrecked sailors, but rather the elongated, elegant Latin cross, so deeply cherished and widely employed by the Crusader orders. Some individuals discern the faint outlines of shields, subtly etched into the rock face. Others perceive the unmistakable forms of swords. Still others, adopting a more cynical stance, merely scoff, remarking with a dismissive wave of the hand, "Lycan is a far more accomplished artist than any medieval knight could ever hope to be." And so, the perpetual argument continues, ebbing and flowing like the relentless waves themselves. Is it genuine evidence or mere accidental formation? A deliberate design or simply the slow, inexorable process of erosion? A particularly famous and fiercely debated controversy swirls around the enigmatic structure known as the Newport Tower in Rhode Island. For many, it is simply a colonial windmill, a structure of plain, unadorned practicality, built for grinding grain. However, for a small, dedicated group of fringe enthusiasts, it represents nothing less than a medieval chapel, its ancient arches seemingly whispering silent tales of old-world masons and the profound principles of sacred geometry. The very proportions, one amateur historian passionately claims, resonate with the unmistakable presence of the Templar hand. Professional scholars, predictably, merely chuckle at such assertions, sagely pointing out that colonial farmers, too, possessed the practical knowledge and skill necessary to competently stack stones. Perhaps, one might muse, both perspectives contain a kernel of truth. Perhaps a farmer's utilitarian mill can, in its enduring silence, still hum the spectral memory of a hidden, sacred mass. We allow our imaginations to wander deeper, further into the verdant embrace of the forest edge. The rich, earthy scent of damp soil rises around us, mingling with the crisp aroma of pine. Pine needles, soft and yielding, cushion our every step. And then, unexpectedly, carved into a formidable slab of granite, we glimpse a subtle mark, a cross, faint and deeply weathered, almost entirely swallowed by the encroaching moss. Is this merely a random coincidence, an accidental confluence of nature and time? Or might it represent the quiet, deliberate footprint of a knight, a man who, with cautious intent, wished to leave behind a trace of proof, yet not so overtly as to invite condemnation or expose the profound secret he carried? Indeed, it would be entirely characteristic of the Templars, known for their secrecy and cunning, to leave behind a form of evidence that is not, in the conventional sense, evidence at all, a cryptic riddle, a fleeting whisper, a stone whose true meaning demands far more unwavering belief than mere visual confirmation. And here, a touch of gentle humor delicately interweaves itself into the narrative. One can vividly imagine a weary knight, after months of arduous sea travel, meticulously carving his sacred mark into the unyielding rock with profound solemnity, only for a passing, indifferent beaver to gnaw it away into oblivion many years later. History, we must always remember, possesses no inherent sympathy for human intentions, however noble or profound. It cares solely for what physically survives the relentless march of time and the forces of nature. Some scholars continue to vigorously dispute whether the Kensington runestone, discovered in Minnesota, is a genuine artifact or merely a clever, elaborate hoax. Its perplexing inscription purports to confirm the presence of Norse explorers in the year 1362, a full century before Columbus's famed voyage. Yet a few fringe voices cautiously suggest that this runestone could also hint at a fascinating mingling of esoteric Templar knowledge with the ancient wanderings of the Norse. The mainstream academic community, predictably, bristles with indignant rejection, declaring unequivocally impossible. But the very notion of impossibility, paradoxically, often proves to be the most fertile and stimulating soil for the blossoming of human imagination and alternative theories. We find ourselves unable to suppress a faint smile at the poignant irony. Colonial children, generations ago, once joyfully played their innocent games near the Newport Tower, utterly oblivious that their seemingly simple amusements were being staged within the very crucible of a profound and enduring historical controversy. For these children, the venerable structure was neither a Templar relic nor a farmer's practical mill, but simply an excellent and exhilarating location for a spirited game of hide-and-seek. It appears to be a consistent pattern that history's most profound and captivating riddles are, more often than not, entirely overlooked or simply ignored by those who reside in closest proximity to them. The night air grows perceptibly thicker, and the crackling of our fire softens to a gentle murmur. On these forgotten shores, we continue our imaginative quest, tracing not only the ephemeral footprints left in the sand, but also the more enduring marks etched into stone, the elusive whispers found in rumor, and the resonant echoes preserved within ancient story. Perhaps these traces are nothing more than the ephemeral shadows cast by our own fervent wishful thinking, fleeting illusions conjured by a desire for mystery. Or perhaps they are precisely what they appear to be, the faint yet remarkably stubborn marks of a resilient order, an organization that adamantly refused to truly perish, its legacy pressed indelibly and forever into the very fabric of a land that was never, in the grand scheme of things, supposed to know them. The waves, as if responding to our contemplation, hush their restless murmur. The stars in the vast firmament brighten with an intensified brilliance, and for a fleeting, ethereal moment, it feels as though those ancient, spectral boots still tread softly beside us, their profound silence resonating far more loudly and meaningfully than any written chronicle could ever hope to convey. The night air, now thick with the earthy scent of pine and damp soil, invites us to step deeper still into the ancient whispering forests of the New World. The vast ocean now lies behind us, a distant and mournful sigh, and all around, the towering trees rise majestically, like the colossal pillars of some unseen, verdant cathedral. Their dense needles create a natural hush, muffling the wind's passage, while their ancient branches creak softly overhead, as if in whispered conversation. If the Knights Templar did indeed set foot upon these shores, it is highly probable that their primary quest would have been for sanctuary, for profound concealment, and perhaps, most crucially, for a secluded place where they could continue to practice what had always fundamentally defined them, not the clang of battles, nor the accumulation of earthly wealth, but their esoteric rites and sacred rituals. It is a well-documented historical fact that the Templars faced severe accusations during their infamous trials in 1307. Among these were charges of engaging in secret rituals, of oaths whispered in hushed tones by candlelight, of symbolic kisses exchanged in hidden places, and even of the worship of strange and unorthodox icons. Mainstream historians are quick to remind us that the majority of these accusations were, in all likelihood, forced confessions, brutally extracted under the duress of torture and the paralyzing grip of fear. Yet the persistent nature of these very charges, these claims of strange rites and clandestine ceremonies, compels us to wonder, did these enigmatic practices truly vanish entirely with the order's official suppression? Or did they perhaps scatter like resilient seeds upon the wind, eventually taking root and flourishing in unexpected, distant soils? Some whispers suggest that, deep within the vast, untamed American woods, these very same ancient rituals continued to echo. That sacred bread was broken not within the hallowed confines of traditional churches, but in secluded forest clearings. That consecrated wine was sipped from makeshift chalices, perhaps hastily carved from the wood of a maple tree. That fervent prayers, far older than the nascent colonies themselves, rose in hushed reverence toward the overarching canopy of ancient trees. Could the soft, fallen pine needles have thus been transformed into their impromptu altar cloth? Could the gentle, rustling whisper of the wind through the branches have replaced the solemn, resonant voices of a traditional choir? We imagine the faint, flickering glow of a solitary lantern, swinging gently in the profound darkness of the night, its light illuminating a small, hushed circle of weary men. They bow their heads in silent devotion, pledging allegiance not to the distant authority of Rome, nor to the temporal power of any king, but to something far more ancient and profound, a sacred bloodline, an unbreakable vow, and an enduring, potent silence. Of course, the professional scholars respond with a dismissive laugh. No evidence, they reiterate, pointing out, quite logically, that every early settler and pilgrim, in their own way, offered prayers in the solitude of the woods, and that candlelit gatherings were hardly so rare or unique as to definitively prove anything so extraordinary. Still, there persist whispers of peculiar symbols discovered carved into the bark of ancient trees, crosses entwined with serpents, enigmatic marks that bear an uncanny resemblance to those etched into the venerable Templar chapels across Europe. Some skeptics argue these are nothing more than initials crudely carved by lovesick colonists, or perhaps the idle marks of early explorers. Others vehemently insist they are profound emblems, purposefully carried across a vast ocean. The dispute, much like thin smoke, lingers in the air, evasive, elusive, and ultimately impossible to firmly grasp or definitively resolve. There is a quiet, almost tender humor to be found here as well. Imagine the profound solemnity of armored knights, kneeling in their full regalia beneath the sheltering boughs of pine branches, only to have their sacred ceremony abruptly interrupted by the curious, rummaging antics of a foraging raccoon at their feet. The sacred, it seems, seldom concerns itself with its immediate environment, and perhaps this very detachment constitutes its profound appeal. Ancient ceremonies, when uprooted and replanted in alien terrain, often manifest with a peculiar blend of ungainliness and profound sanctity, much like a devout crusader unexpectedly stumbling over a gnarled tree root during a fervent supplication. Beyond the accepted historical narratives, certain speculative theories murmur suggestively that some of these hidden woodland observances may have intertwined with the spiritual practices of indigenous tribes, implying a profound exchange where emblematic representations traversed not merely vast oceanic expanses, but also distinct cultural boundaries. Indeed, some narrators of these alternative histories propose that the revered serpent, a potent symbol within particular native cosmologies, became intricately entwined with the distinctive red cross of the Templars. This improbable union, they contend, culminated in the genesis of a truly hybrid emblem, representing a compelling synthesis, half ancient heritage from the old world, half emergent identity from the new. Established historians, predictably, often react to such unconventional notions with undisguised skepticism, a collective sigh of intellectual disapproval. Yet, a persistent question lingers in the mind. If the very imperative of survival necessitated absolute discretion and silence, would it not have been entirely pragmatic for the displaced Templars to embrace, integrate, and indeed subtly camouflage their practices. Rituals, fundamentally, possess an inherent capacity for adaptation, and faith, by its very nature, demonstrates an extraordinary inventiveness when confronted with existential challenges. A pungent, resinous aroma of fresh sap now permeates the air, distinctly sharp in our olfactory senses. Close by, the gentle, incessant murmur of a meandering brook reaches our ears, its cool waters gracefully caressing ancient stones, creating a subtle, rhythmic symphony akin to a cascade of hushed, reverent supplications. In the mind's eye, the sylvan clearing appears to acquire an ethereal luminescence, as though subtly illuminated by a multitude of invisible candles. One can almost discern the solemn utterances, the profound declarations echoing through the imagined space, pledges of absolute secrecy, of unwavering guardianship, and of an enduring loyalty directed not towards a pontiff who ultimately betrayed them, nor to a monarch who relentlessly pursued them, but rather to an ancient oath, far predating the establishment of any earthly thrones, perhaps even to a venerable family lineage that carried a gravitas exceeding the collective authority of all the royal crowns in Europe combined. Even today, certain historical scholars continue to vigorously debate whether various clandestine fraternities that emerged in early America, such as the enigmatic Freemasons, might indeed preserve discernible vestiges of Templar ritualistic practices. The observed congruities, it must be conceded, are remarkably suggestive, from the esoteric symbols they employ, to their distinctive recognition handshakes, and even to the intricate principles of sacred geometries woven into their foundational tenets. Conversely, many academic experts are quick to dismiss these striking resemblances as mere happenstance, a series of unrelated coincidences. Nevertheless, it is an observable phenomenon that when such coincidences accrue in significant numbers, they often begin to assume a disquieting resemblance to deliberate underlying patterns, hinting at something more profound than chance. We find ourselves now in a state of tranquil repose, attentively heeding the subtle symphony of the forest. The towering pines appear to murmur secrets amongst themselves, their ancient branches swaying as if privy to forgotten histories. Their slender needles quiver delicately, their elongated shadows stretch and lean, and beneath their protective canopy, amidst the profound quietude of the encroaching night, one can almost palpably sense it. The profound historical weight of sacred rituals meticulously transported across vast oceans, meticulously concealed beneath the dense foliage of these venerable trees, and diligently safeguarded within the cloak of enduring silence. A small, comforting fire gently crackles its low, rhythmic cadence just behind us. Yet, in this fleeting, hallowed instant, the expansive, verdant forest itself transcends its natural form, transforming into our solemn and majestic chapel. The profound stillness of the forest continues to resonate softly within our auditory perception. And as this quietude persists, the mind conjures images where the symbolic representations begin to acquire an almost ethereal shimmer. The stark, upright crosses and the sinuous, coiling serpents appear intricately woven together, much like disparate languages gradually discovering a shared lexicon and a common mode of expression. Symbols, it must be acknowledged, emerge as the most authentic and enduring voyagers. They possess an innate capacity to effortlessly surmount geographical and cultural frontiers with far greater ease than even the most formidable armies, subtly embedding themselves within ancient carvings, enigmatic marks, and enduring oral narratives, persisting in mediums where fragile parchment would long since have disintegrated. And within the vast, uncharted territories of the New World, certain clandestine murmurs suggest that the distinctive Templar cross did not endure in solitary isolation. Rather, it is said to have encountered and engaged with the potent indigenous symbol of the serpent. As a matter of historical fact, the serpent has for millennia occupied a profoundly sacred and emblematic position across the diverse cultures of the Americas. Its enduring presence is vividly manifest from the monumental, undulating coils of the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, an ancient effigy stretching majestically for over 1,000 feet, to the revered plumed serpent deity, Quetzalcoatl, central to the rich tapestry of Mesoamerican legend. This multifaceted symbol consistently embodied a complex array of attributes: immense power, profound wisdom, inherent danger, the promise of renewal, and an aura of deep mystery. The cross, by contrast, served as the ubiquitous emblem of Christendom, yet it held particular significance for the Knights Templar, who proudly displayed it, painted in a striking red upon a pristine white field. This visual representation was stark, unyielding, and profoundly emblematic, effectively transforming a solemn vow into a visibly manifest declaration of their sacred commitment. The notion that these two distinct and potent symbols, the serpent and the cross, might somehow intertwine initially appears to defy credulity, striking one as inherently improbable. Nevertheless, a deeper observation reveals that when disparate cultures engage and interact, their respective symbols do not merely crash against one another in a simple collision. Rather, they tend to intricately interweave and braid, forming new, complex patterns. Certain unconventional theories posit that when these old-world sojourners, whether they were Norse explorers, Templar knights, or other early European adventurers, encountered indigenous peoples in the Americas, their interaction was not characterized by a forceful erasure of native traditions. Instead, it is suggested, a process of mutual integration and cultural merging took place. According to these narratives, the serpent and the cross consequently began to coexist, sharing prominent visual space on ancient stone carvings and intricate wooden totems. Predictably, cynical observers and established academics often discounted these distinctive markings as mere misinterpretations, trivial scratches mistakenly elevated to the status of miraculous evidence. Nevertheless, these compelling narratives continue to endure and circulate, and much like the persistent, tightening embrace of a serpent's coil, they resurface repeatedly, gaining additional traction and intensity with each successive recounting. Let us momentarily envision such a scene: a secluded forest clearing, gently illuminated by the flickering glow of a central fire, where venerable native elders and enigmatic foreign knights engage in a profound exchange of symbolic gestures. One individual might indicate the sinuous form of the serpent, while the other solemnly points to the stark outline of the cross. Initially, this interaction would undoubtedly be an ungainly dialogue, composed equally of enigmatic symbols and long, pregnant silences. Yet, with patient perseverance, their respective understandings slowly begin to converge and overlap. Both parties possess an intuitive comprehension that the serpent's periodic shedding of its skin represents profound transformation and cyclical renewal. Similarly, Both grasp that the cross, in its profound symbolism, embodies concepts of ultimate sacrifice and subsequent regeneration. Thus, the Christian notion of resurrection finds a resonant echo in indigenous concepts of rebirth. In this powerful convergence, two distinct worlds, represented by two potent emblems, begin to realize they are not adversarial forces, but rather kindred spirits, distant cousins bound by universal truths. A certain subtle humor also permeates this imagined scenario. One might easily visualize a knight, earnest in his conviction and profoundly solemn in his demeanor, attempting to elucidate the profound meaning of the Red Cross through an elaborate series of hand gestures, only for a native elder to respond with equally grave solemnity, expounding upon the significance of the serpent. While each individual might privately harbor a fleeting suspicion that the other is perhaps slightly eccentric or even deranged, this vignette underscores a crucial insight. Even the most potent and universal symbols, it appears, ultimately necessitate the presence of skilled translators to bridge the chasm of cultural understanding. A persistent and vigorous academic dispute continues among certain historians concerning the precise age of the serpent mound and whether it decisively predates European contact by several centuries, or indeed, if it ever experienced any form of influence from external cultures. Archaeological consensus firmly dates its construction to approximately 1000 CE, placing its creation well over 2 centuries before the tragic dissolution of the Knights Templar. Consequently, prominent mainstream voices adamantly declare it impossible for any direct cultural or symbolic overlap to have ever transpired. Nevertheless, proponents of less conventional theories offer a compelling counter-argument. If an imposing serpent-shaped earthwork already dominated the landscape upon the arrival of these knights, would they not have instinctively perceived within it a profound resonance with their own esoteric mysteries? Did the Templars not, after all, meticulously safeguard certain arcane secrets that bore a serpentine character? Indeed, the enigmatic figure of Baphomet, frequently whispered about during their infamous trials, was often described with distinct serpentine allusions and characteristics. The vivid flame within our collective imagination now flickers with renewed intensity. On one side of this mental tableau, the ancient and intrinsically native serpent gracefully undulates, embodying primeval wisdom. On the opposing side, the cross gleams with a stark, vibrant red, a potent symbol carried from the hallowed dust of Jerusalem. And between these two powerful emblems, a tangible space of profound possibility emerges, a captivating void where a significant mingling could have transpired. It remains an open question whether the enigmatic carvings depicting entwined crosses and serpents are merely the result of chance occurrences or accidental formations. Alternatively, they might stand as compelling, albeit cryptic, evidence of a profound cross-cultural dialogue that has regrettably faded from collective memory. A faint, knowing smile plays upon our lips as we contemplate the profound irony of the situation. Those very men, who were vehemently accused in Europe of engaging in the worship of strange and heretical idols, may have indeed discovered in the vast expanse of America an even more ancient and powerful serpent symbol awaiting them, a symbol that, paradoxically, made their supposedly blasphemous beliefs feel almost akin to a familiar spiritual homecoming. Should the imperative of sheer survival have dictated the seamless integration of one sacred symbol with another, or the intertwining of solemn oaths, then perhaps such actions constituted not so much a theological heresy as an undeniable and pragmatic necessity. The distinctive aroma of pine continues to subtly pervade the atmosphere, yet now another nuanced olfactory note begins to emerge and assert itself. The sharp, mineral tang of ancient stone, gently warmed by the sun's persistent embrace, mingling with the earthy, grassy musk emanating from colossal earthworks that predate recorded memory itself. We pause, standing contemplatively before these monumental structures, these enigmatic coils fashioned from the very soil, imbued with the profound essence of ancient symbols of faith, and a fundamental question arises: whose hands truly sculpted their original forms, or perhaps subtly reshaped them upon the arrival of subsequent unfamiliar visitors? The ancient serpent continues its eternal curl, while the unyielding cross maintains its steadfast verticality. In their conceptual meeting, we discern a tantalizing glimpse of a profound, hidden kinship. For if abstract symbols possess the capacity to intricately braid and interweave, then perhaps human bloodlines, too, are capable of such a complex fusion. Our contemplative journey now leads us to a secluded valley, nestled intimately between softly undulating hills. It is a place where the ambient light descends in delicate golden slivers, piercing through the ethereal mist and the dense canopy of ancient trees, casting an almost mystical glow upon the landscape. Within this tranquil sanctuary stands a structure of profound humility, so utterly modest and outwardly unremarkable that it could very easily escape notice altogether. A simple wooden chapel, entirely devoid of ornamentation, its ancient doors visibly weathered and gently bowed by the relentless passage of countless seasons. No distinguishing name is meticulously carved above its humble entrance, nor is there any commemorative plaque to proclaim its precise origins or historical lineage. Yet one cannot help but perceive its subtle, enduring presence, a quiet, almost insistent suggestion that it diligently safeguards something of profound significance, deliberately hidden from the prying gaze of the wider world. From a purely factual standpoint, it is well documented that early European settlers frequently erected rudimentary chapels on the untamed frontier, serving both as markers for nascent communities and as isolated sanctuaries for the practice of their faith in remote seclusion. However, this particular chapel exudes a distinct, almost palpable difference. Its structural beams possess an antiquity that stretches far beyond the conventional scope of colonial memory. Furthermore, the very nails utilized in its construction, meticulously hand-forged, bear the undeniable imprint of artisanal techniques that had largely faded into obscurity by the mid-17th century. A compelling theory posits that this unassuming edifice may have been constructed by direct descendants of the Knights Templar, individuals who, having fled relentless persecution, arrived on these shores bearing not the emblazoned banners of their former order, but rather an unshakable faith, and crucially, a trove of profound secrets that mandated absolute obscurity for their preservation. The precise origins of this structure remain a subject of active contention among historians, with some scholars adamantly insisting that it represents nothing more than a remarkably clever reconstruction fashioned by early settlers, meticulously attempting to emulate familiar European architectural styles. Nevertheless, the careful calibration of its angles and the subtle underlying geometry of its construction appear to be deliberately measured, imbued with an almost ritualistic precision. Stepping inside, The air is redolent with the deep, resonant scent of aged pine and the faint, sweet fragrance of beeswax, subtly commingling with the ethereal vestiges of long-extinguished candle smoke. Light, diffused and softened, gently filters through the small, irregularly shaped windows, casting intricate, shifting rectangles of illumination across the deeply worn, ancient wooden floorboards. Within these hallowed, yet potentially hidden confines, the precise demarcation between the openly sacred and the deeply clandestine appears to dissolve and blur. One can readily imagine a devout priest having once solemnly celebrated Mass within these walls, or alternatively, envision men gathered in hushed conclave, exchanging profound, whispered oaths over tables laden not with consecrated bread, but with ancient, guarded parchment. It is not difficult to conjure the image of a solitary knight, kneeling in the profound depths of the shadows, his head respectfully bowed, his heart resonating with a heavy, rhythmic thud, burdened by the immense historical weight of a hidden lineage whose very existence remained utterly unknown to the outside world. Indeed, a subtle vein of humor resides within the very simplicity of this structure. Outside its ancient walls, a nimble squirrel darts unconcernedly across the worn wooden steps, utterly oblivious to the profound weight of centuries of human intrigue and meticulously guarded secrecy contained within. High above, within the dusty rafters, a small bird chirps its lively tune, almost as if playfully mocking the profound solemnity of human intrigue and clandestine undertakings. This natural intrusion serves as a poignant reminder that even the most consecrated and hallowed spaces cannot entirely evade the inevitable incursions of the ordinary and the mundane. Perhaps indeed, this very ordinariness was a deliberate and ingenious stratagem employed by the Templars or their descendants to effectively conceal themselves in plain sight, their profound secrets meticulously shielded by the unassuming veneer of commonality, and ultimately protected by the world's inherent propensity to disregard the seemingly unremarkable. Further expanding the realm of speculative thought, some fringe theories propose the existence of subterranean chambers beneath the chapel's unassuming floorboards, hermetically sealed with ancient, long-forgotten rituals, their contents shrouded in profound mystery. Established historians, adhering to conventional wisdom, are quick to label such notions as pure fantasy, a fanciful amalgamation of persistent legend and optimistic wishful thinking. Yet, even as they dismiss, faint, cold drafts of air persistently seep through minute cracks in the aged floorboards, conveying an insistent chill, almost as if subtly hinting at the undeniable presence of hollow, hidden spaces beneath. One cannot help but ponder the profound possibilities. Could these concealed compartments have once safeguarded invaluable relics, vital historical documents, or perhaps even the very continuity of the Templar lineage itself? We find ourselves instinctively leaning closer to the ancient floorboards, vividly imagining the soft, almost imperceptible scrape of hidden doors being cautiously opened, conjuring the distinct aroma of aged wood and accumulated dust, and feeling the undeniable thrill associated with a profound secret meticulously preserved through centuries of unwavering silence. A soft, knowing chuckle escapes us at the sheer audacity of the thought. A Templar's final resting place, or perhaps a vital repository of their heritage, deliberately concealed beneath a chapel so utterly diminutive that it could easily be mistaken for a simple storage shed. One might even surmise that the knights themselves, with their penchant for strategic misdirection, would have deeply appreciated the profound irony inherent in such a masterful concealment. Thus, it is the most profound and monumental secrets that are often most effectively safeguarded by the most humble timbers, meticulously hidden in plain sight, within locations where no one would ever conceive of searching. For, in the grand narrative of history, it is rarely the ostentatious displays that are ultimately rewarded. Instead, the annals of time tend to favor the discreet, the patient, and the profoundly quiet. Despite these intriguing conjectures, a segment of historical scholars continues to dispute vehemently whether these unassuming frontier chapels could have ever contained anything beyond the routine activities and simple functions of ordinary parish life. Conversely, other researchers, their curiosity piqued by the subtle anomalies, direct attention to faint, almost imperceptible carvings etched into the ancient wood, distinct crosses, enigmatic stars, and even sinuous serpentine lines that bear a striking and undeniable resemblance to the esoteric iconography associated with the Old World Knights Templar. Does fortune dictate such intricate arrangements? Or might these be deliberate clues, carefully placed for those discerning individuals who possess the rare intuition to perceive them? They are akin to subtle signposts scattered within an expansive wilderness, intended for the most dedicated explorers of the extraordinary. The crisp aroma of pine needles now intermingles with the subtle, damp fragrance of the earth. A gentle illumination traverses the interior space, and for a fleeting moment, one can easily envision kneeling in silent reverence beside a small, wavering candle flame. Beyond the aged walls, the expansive valley exhales with a profound quietude, as if the very edifice of the chapel itself is intently listening to the world around it. This sanctuary, bereft of a formal designation and often overlooked by casual passers-by, nonetheless possesses an undeniable profundity. Its significance stems not from any grand pronouncements, but rather from the hushed narratives it imparts to those who are prepared to draw near and truly absorb its silent declarations. Stepping back, a comprehensive view emerges. This is a chapel lacking a specific appellation, yet it resonates with an abundance of unseen voices, a trove of poignant memories, and a multitude of concealed truths. These secrets are not communicated through spoken or written language, but rather through the palpable essence of its presence, through meticulous observation, and through the profound weight of what has been carefully preserved and what remains deliberately hidden within its confines. The chapel is then left behind, as one ventures into expansive, open fields where ancient stones lie scattered, resembling the scattered punctuation marks of an unfinished epic narrative. Some stand proudly erect, enduring the passage of centuries, while others have yielded to time, toppled and partially submerged. All are now bathed in the ethereal, soft, silver radiance of the encroaching dusk. Within this landscape, one begins to discern the inherent geometry of the terrain, those subtle, deliberate alignments that speak not to the practical concerns of agriculturalists or the precise measurements of surveyors, but rather to the profound understanding of those who interpret the world through the ancient wisdom of celestial bodies and arcane symbols. The fabled rose line, once a hushed legend whispered through the labyrinthine thoroughfares of Paris, appears to emit a faint, resonant hum, traversing the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Its essence is seemingly carried within the elongated shadows, etched into the very stones, and embedded deeply within collective memory. From a strictly factual standpoint, the Paris Meridian, sometimes poetically referred to as the Rose Line due to its romantic associations, was precisely established in the 17th century. Its primary function was for advanced astronomical calculations, and it physically bisects the city, running directly along a north-south axis. However, a rich tapestry of speculation has, for centuries, interwoven itself with older, more enigmatic interpretations of its meaning. Certain proponents assert that the Knights Templar and various other clandestine fraternities utilized even earlier, pre-existing alignments of hallowed sites, magnificent cathedrals, and ancient sepulchres. Their purported aim was to meticulously encode profound knowledge pertaining to specific bloodlines, intricate power structures, and elusive prophecies. Conversely, mainstream historians typically counsel against attributing deliberate intention to what might simply be mere happenstance, contending that such perceived alignments are frequently either naturally occurring geological formations or purely coincidental arrangements. Yet despite these cautions, the persistent echoes of these theories continue to resonate in hushed conversations, in obscure illustrations, and in meticulously calculated geographical distances. Upon these particular American fields, one is invited to imagine stones positioned not by random chance or natural processes, but by the deliberate and skilled hands of ancient architects, their edges meticulously calibrated to coincide with the precise moment of sunrise during the solstices, and the elongated shadows cast by one upright monolith falling with calculated precision across the surface of another, forming a purposeful and intricate design. Perhaps it was the descendants of the Templars, or perhaps secret-keeping early settlers who meticulously replicated what had once been carefully inscribed across the European continent. A silent, profound acknowledgement of advanced geometry, sophisticated astronomy, and the pervasive influence of the unseen forces of the cosmos. Indeed, some persistent theorists adamantly maintain that this arcane practice quietly endured, meticulously preserved within the veiled rituals of Freemasonry. They suggest it manifested in subtle lines meticulously drawn across vast landscapes, intended not as declarations of worldly power, but as a sophisticated means to safeguard profound historical memory. A delicate irony undeniably permeates this narrative. The very individuals who were historically branded as heretics, those whispered to have conspired in the shadowed crypts of basements and the hallowed naves of cathedrals, may have, in fact, transported their profound obsession with precise geometry and cosmic order to an entirely nascent world that had never before encountered such esoteric knowledge. While these enigmatic figures meticulously charted the movements of the sun, the constellations of the stars, and the precise angles of shadows, the ordinary colonists of the era would have likely puzzled over the peculiar, seemingly inexplicable placement of these same stones, unable to grasp their deeper significance. A soft, almost imperceptible chuckle might escape one's lips, envisioning a bewildered settler murmuring to themselves, "Why on earth would anyone arrange stones in such an odd manner? It must be sheer madness." Meanwhile, a hidden hand, unseen and knowing, would perhaps offer a quiet, satisfied smile in the encroaching darkness. Simultaneously, the rich scent of freshly turned earth would gently ascend, subtly commingling with the faint, sweet perfume of wildflowers that have resiliently taken root and blossomed amongst the ancient stones. One might now run their fingertips over the weathered texture of carved rock, made smooth and polished by innumerable seasons of wind and driving rain, yet undeniably deliberate in the precision of its angles. Some of the lines etched into these surfaces may indeed suggest nothing more than pure happenstance. However, others, for those who lean in closer with an attentive spirit, subtly hint at a profound underlying purpose. The metaphorical line of the rose extends, an invisible yet undeniably potent presence, spanning entire continents, gently whispering of an ancient knowledge meticulously preserved through intricate design and careful placement. Scholars continue to vigorously debate whether the complex geometric patterns observed in various American archaeological sites, such as the enigmatic Newport Tower or numerous ancient native earthworks, genuinely reflect a direct influence from the Old World, or represent entirely independent, parallel developments. Some researchers emphatically dismiss any proposed connections as mere fanciful conjecture, lacking concrete evidence. Others, however, noting subtle yet persistent consistencies and recurring motifs, cautiously speculate that a sophisticated understanding of geometry and the principles of sacred alignment could very well have journeyed across the Atlantic with early European secret societies. Perhaps the true impetus behind these mysterious acts was less about asserting dominance or territorial claims, and more profoundly about the sacred act of remembrance, meticulously tracing the invisible, enduring threads of ancestral lineage, unwavering faith, and profound spiritual devotion. One might vividly imagine the scene: a flickering torchlight casting dancing shadows across a moonlit meadow, a solitary figure kneeling with intense focus over a rough-hewn stone, meticulously scratching intricate lines into the yielding earth, perhaps measuring precise angles with a simple length of string, all the while murmuring ancient prayers or solemn oaths beneath their breath. It is conceivable that a cross, carefully aligned, points directly towards a distant, significant hill. Perhaps a perfectly formed circle subtly echoes the majestic, sweeping curvature of the far-off horizon, reflecting a cosmic symmetry. Such seemingly insignificant actions, rendered invisible to all but the most observant and discerning eyes, gradually evolve into a clandestine language of secrecy, faithfully transmitted from one generation to the next, ensuring its enduring survival. And here, a subtle vein of humor quietly emerges. The very same meticulous hands that once measured stones with such profound solemnity and precision may, at another moment, have inadvertently stumbled over a protruding tree root, or tripped awkwardly on uneven ground, muttering exasperated oaths not to a divine entity, but rather to the immutable forces of gravity. This serves as a gentle reminder that even the most sacred and meticulously crafted designs are ultimately subject to the unpredictable whims and minor mischiefs of the earthly realm. The sun continues its descent, sinking lower towards the horizon, and the shadows, in response, stretch out, elongating dramatically across the landscape. Upon these ancient stones and across these vast fields that might appear utterly devoid of significance to the casual observer, the profound echoes of the legendary rose line steadfastly endure. Geometry, unwavering faith, and profound secrecy become intricately entwined, forming a subtle yet robust bridge that spans from the ancient lands of Europe to the nascent territories of the New World. It whispers a timeless truth: that the past is never truly obliterated, provided one possesses the sagacity to know precisely where and how to seek its persistent remnants. As the final vestiges of dusk gracefully yield to the encroaching embrace of night, one navigates a narrow, winding path, flanked on either side by the majestic silhouettes of towering oak trees. The air, now dense and heavy, is redolent with the rich, earthy scent of moss and the sweet decay of fallen leaves. It is here, nestled within the profound quietude of hidden valleys and tucked-away homesteads, that the unassuming families reside. These are the silent guardians who have meticulously preserved their profound secrets without public spectacle, without erecting grand monuments, and without commissioning elaborate chronicles. They are the anonymous keepers, diligently safeguarding relics and transmitting ancient stories that the broader world has, for far too long, chosen to disregard or simply forget. It is a well-documented historical fact that European settlers, embarking on their arduous journeys across the vast ocean, frequently carried with them small, cherished devotional items, treasured books, and other meaningful keepsakes. Yet, a select few families, distinguished by their unusually meticulous habits and profound sense of historical continuity, not only preserved these common items, but also maintained objects and traditions that bear an uncanny and compelling resemblance to the esoteric practices of the Old World Templars. These include intricately carved crosses, enigmatic coded journals, and chalices adorned with peculiar symbolic markings. Mainstream historians, in their professional assessment, tend to dismiss these anomalies as mere eccentricities, viewing them as nothing more than the sentimental remnants of a displaced people yearning for the familiarity of their distant homeland. Fringe theorists, however, adopt an entirely different perspective. They interpret these objects and practices as living, tangible threads of a sacred bloodline, subtle yet compelling proofs that the profound legacy of the Templars quietly persisted and endured, woven seamlessly into the fabric of seemingly ordinary lives. One might pause, allowing the imagination to vividly construct the interior of a modest, unassuming farmhouse. Faded candlelight flickers, casting dancing shadows across rustic wooden shelves, illuminating a tarnished brass cross, a carefully folded, aged parchment, and a small, intricately carved serpent. The rich, comforting aroma of aged oak timber now mingles subtly with the faint, ethereal scent of candle smoke. A delicate trace of lavender might also be present, perhaps having been meticulously tucked between the brittle pages of an ancient book, intended to subtly mask the pervasive mustiness that inevitably accompanies the relentless passage of time. One can almost perceive the gentle creak of old floorboards as a child, utterly oblivious to the profound, sacred heritage quietly resting beneath their innocent feet, playfully dashes through the room. There is, indeed, a profound irony layered upon the annals of history. The most deeply guarded and significant secrets frequently find their safest haven within the most humble and unassuming of spaces. Some of these dedicated keepers may have inherited their intricate rituals in the form of hushed instructions, traditions passed down in profound silence from a knowing parent to a receptive child, ensuring their unbroken continuity. The method employed is remarkably subtle, almost comical in its understated practicality. There is no requirement for voluminous scrolls to be painstakingly memorized, nor are elaborate public ceremonies deemed necessary. Instead, a mere glance at a particular symbol, A specific phrase uttered at precisely the right moment is often sufficient to ensure the enduring preservation of the lineage. Scholars continue to engage in rigorous debate regarding whether such discrete practices could genuinely preserve historical truth with meaningful accuracy. Nevertheless, the stories themselves steadfastly persist, quietly challenging the neat, often oversimplified narratives presented in conventional textbooks. There is a quiet humor in imagining an elder meticulously correcting a younger descendant. No, the cross must lean ever so slightly to the left, lest our ancestors perceive our carelessness. While the child, perhaps only half believing, rolls their eyes in youthful exasperation, the very act of preserving such a secret transforms into a domestic game, a gentle yet persistent form of rebellion against history's often indifferent gaze. Perhaps the Templars themselves, in their historical context, would have profoundly appreciated this intimate domestic theater. The careful, subtle orchestration of seemingly ordinary lives into a profound and enduring guardianship. Fringe theories provocatively suggest that certain American families preserved relics not merely out of conventional religious devotion, but with the far more profound intention of safeguarding tangible evidence of bloodlines purportedly linked directly to Christ himself. Mainstream historians, predictably, scoff at such extraordinary claims, dismissing them as utterly unsubstantiated. Yet, the persistent recurrence of certain enigmatic symbols, such as crosses intricately entwined with serpents, complex coded numerology, and the meticulous, almost reverent care given to ancient manuscripts, undeniably ignites a potent sense of curiosity. Are these truly mere coincidences, or are they subtle, deliberate nods to a profound past that necessitated absolute concealment? One might trace their fingers over the smooth, worn surface of an ancient carved chest, polished by decades of successive hands, and in doing so, perceive the immense weight and profound significance of historical continuity. Even if the objects themselves appear mundane or unremarkable to the uninitiated, the underlying intention behind their preservation is undeniably deliberate. A quiet, yet powerful rebellion against the relentless march of oblivion. These anonymous and uncelebrated keepers preserve not grand monuments of stone, but the very essence of memory itself. And yet, within their profound silence, there resides a peculiar and undeniable richness. A toast quietly offered over an ordinary family meal, a whispered phrase embedded within a lullaby sung softly in the dark, a subtle mark meticulously etched into the corner of a well-worn table. All these seemingly minor actions transform into profound acts of faith. They are small, enduring miracles that persist precisely because they remain largely unnoticed by the wider world. Sometimes one is led to ponder that the greatest triumph of the Templars was not their legendary battles or their vast accumulated wealth, but rather their uncanny and enduring ability to impart to others the subtle, invaluable art of quiet, inconspicuous survival. The night deepens further. The leaves rustle with a hushed cadence, and somewhere in the pervasive darkness, a single candle bravely flickers against the gentle caress of the wind. In that faint, ethereal glow, one can almost palpably feel the presence of those dedicated individuals who guard what cannot be easily catalogued or quantified: sacred lineage, profound knowledge, and the intimate, cherished memory of a world that the greater narrative of history has largely chosen to ignore. One continues to follow a narrow river as it gracefully winds its way through the ancient lands, its flowing waters reflecting the moonlight in shimmering silver ribbons. The sound it produces is soft, rhythmic, a soothing lullaby far older than any of the settlements that now border its timeless banks. Some believe that rivers inherently carry within their currents the very memories of the past. And tonight, one allows this particular river to serve as a silent guide, leading through the invisible, persistent currents of history, gently whispering tales of ancient travelers, exiled figures, and profound secrets that steadfastly refuse to sink into the depths of forgetfulness. Undeniably, rivers held a pivotal role in the nascent stages of colonial settlement, providing routes for transportation, channels for irrigation, and fundamental means of survival. Yet, beyond these obvious applications, they also served as effective cloaks for evasion. Speculative theories propose that the progeny of the Knights Templar, facing relentless persecution, might have expertly navigated these aqueous routes to move unobserved. They are imagined carrying sacred artifacts and crucial documents, traversing dense woodlands and marshy terrains, always meticulously avoiding any discernible evidence of their passage. Academic discourse surrounds the tangible proof of such alleged expeditions. A segment of the scholarly community wholly rejects these notions, pointing to the absence of official historical accounts. Nevertheless, the subtle rumors and speculative narratives persist, echoing with the unwavering flow of the river itself. One might halt to absorb the ambient sounds, a moment of contemplative quietude, the gentle lapping of the river against its shores, the delicate trembling of the tall reeds, and the majestic ascent of a heron, whose expansive wings create fleeting, shimmering silhouettes upon the water's expanse. Consider the possibility that, aeons past, a modest vessel might have silently navigated these very waters. Envision it burdened with heavy coffers, brimming with aged manuscripts, ancient monetary units, and cryptic emblems signifying an obscured ancestral line. Reflect on the potential prayers of those aboard, not merely for their immediate security, but for the perpetuation of a genealogical line. This lineage, if brought to light, possessed the potential to destabilize monarchies, or at the very least, profoundly unsettle prevailing historical accounts. A touch of levity subtly infiltrates the mental imagery. One can almost vividly imagine a knight softly cautioning his comrades, perhaps with a wry tone. Exercise care with the paddle, lest we inadvertently disclose our ancestral mysteries to the flowing water. Meanwhile, the river itself seems to playfully conspire, offering capricious currents and abrupt breezes. Even the most grave and significant undertakings appear to skirt the edge of disarray. It is as if history itself harbors a peculiar, understated sense of amusement, finding irony in the unfolding of events. A segment of historical scholars continues to contend that narratives concerning concealed river routes are merely embellished and idealized overstatements. Nevertheless, indigenous folklore, orally transmitted across successive generations, recounts instances of distinctive arboreal markings, peculiar configurations of stones, and secluded inlets perfectly suited for the inconspicuous vanishing of watercraft. Proponents of fringe theories assert that these specific landscape elements were deliberately positioned to direct chosen voyagers, effectively constituting a covert system of navigation intrinsically woven into the very fabric of the terrain. The earthy fragrance of damp soil ascends, intermingling with the subtle, refreshing perfume of untamed mint growing beside the water's edge. One might envision a covert ceremony unfolding at first light, hushed supplications uttered, ornate goblets of wine exchanged among participants, and a genealogical succession demarcated not by written script, but by profound purpose. The flowing river, in its perpetual motion, bears their unspoken reverence, blending the aqueous element with historical recollection in perfect balance. A striking paradox lies within this very straightforwardness. The immense expanse of the Atlantic Ocean proved insufficient to conceal the Templar order. Yet a modest river, gracefully curving through the landscape with gentle undulations, might have offered them ideal preservation. Enduring existence frequently benefits the humble, the steadfast, the reticent, and those commonly unnoticed. One follows the water's shimmering path as it reflects the moonlight, mentally tracing its course towards other concealed sanctuaries. These might include secluded dwellings and venerable chapels, harboring families intimately familiar with the profound burden of ancestry and discretion. A knowledge so ingrained it requires no formal documentation. The river murmurs with a gentle eloquence, conveying narratives within its flow that predate military subjugation, cartographical representations, and even the very faculty of human recall. Within that subtle murmur, one perceives the enduring essence of unbroken succession, a fragile, imperceptible filament linking bygone eras to the contemporary moment, discretion to persistence, and conviction to quietude. As the waterway constricts and meanders, attention shifts towards the modest elevations that stand akin to vigilant guardians along its edges. Beneath these softly contoured gradients, it is rumored, repose subterranean vaults, concealed compartments meticulously hewn from solid rock. Their access points are cunningly obscured by verdant moss, interlacing root systems, or the inherent contours of the land itself. Accounts suggest that these subterranean repositories once safeguarded artifacts of immense consequence, sacred relics, ancient scrolls, and potentially conclusive evidence of a genealogical line intended to remain entirely hidden from the scrutiny of both monarchs and pontiffs. From a historical perspective, European societies routinely erected underground spaces for the purposes of preservation, protection, and on occasion, ceremonial practices. The Knights Templar, celebrated for their architectural prowess, were undeniably proficient in the construction of such fortified chambers. Speculative theorists posit that certain Templar vaults endured the transatlantic journey, subsequently being either adapted for new uses or meticulously hidden by their progeny within isolated valleys. Conventional historians express considerable skepticism, asserting that there is no tangible proof to substantiate the presence of such vaults in the New World. Nonetheless, the mere lack of corroborating evidence seldom stifles human ingenuity, particularly when conjecture circulates with the relentless momentum of a flowing river. One treads cautiously across the verdant, moss-covered terrain, envisioning the distinct fragrance of moist masonry, the earthy, musty odor of the soil, and the subtle metallic hint emanating from ancient, long-neglected locking mechanisms. The atmosphere is refreshingly cool, imbued with an almost sacred solemnity. Perhaps, deep beneath the surface, reposes a robust chest, meticulously fashioned from oak and fortified with bands of iron. Its contents, far surpassing the value of mere gold, are prized not for their intrinsic material wealth, but for the profound wisdom and genealogical heritage they safeguard. Certain assertions posit that the Templars' subterranean chambers housed cartographical representations, correspondence, and ancient manuscripts delineating expeditions that challenged accepted historical narratives. These were journeys, it is claimed, that went undocumented in public records, but were carefully maintained in rigorous confidentiality. A delicate vein of amusement emerges when contemplating the painstaking efforts invested in concealing such precious artifacts. One can vividly conjure the image of a knight meticulously calculating angles, perhaps grumbling softly about the precise placement of moss to obscure corners, only for an unexpected deer to dislodge a stone and inadvertently disrupt the entire elaborate scheme. Even those entrusted with safeguarding profound secrets were susceptible to the capricious forces of the natural world, which frequently asserts its ultimate, ironic dominance. Academic contention endures. Do these subterranean chambers genuinely exist, or are they merely apocryphal tales stemming from societal apprehension and folkloric tradition? A faction of historians asserts that any allusions to concealed Templar vaults constitute post facto fabrications, representing a fusion of European romantic ideals and American frontier narratives. In opposition, fringe theorists present anecdotal accounts detailing peculiar indentations on hillsides, subterranean voids beneath ancient chapels, and tunnels exhibiting the distinctive stonework of old-world artisans. The definitive truth remains tantalizingly out of reach, perpetually hovering at the periphery of what seems credible. One envisions a descent down constricted staircases hewn directly from the rock, the reverberation of each footfall absorbed by the profound gloom. The wavering glow of candlelight dances upon walls intricately carved with esoteric symbols, cruciform designs, celestial constellations, and serpentine motifs. Within this very space, it is conceivable that the unbroken successions of an obscured ancestry finds its enduring safekeeping. Every emblem serves as a subtle admonition. Confidentiality can persist not solely by means of written records and spoken declarations, but also through meticulously crafted, intentional voids within rock and obscuring shade. The distinct scent of melting candle wax commingles with the frigid aroma of ancient stone, forming a palpable sensory cue of the profound dedication, unwavering forbearance, and silent attentiveness essential for safeguarding precious information. A nuanced, understated humor once more emerges. One can imagine a Templar, perhaps with a weary sigh at the sheer exertion, quietly lamenting, "If only we possessed the means to instruct mice in the conveyance of messages," all while the small creatures scurried ineffectually at their feet. Despite the most painstaking and detailed preparations, existence itself possesses an inherent tendency towards spontaneous adaptation. Certain academics continue to dispute the fundamental plausibility of New World vaults, whereas other researchers propose that the discernible architectural imprints, precise stone arrangements, concealed underground areas, and deliberate acts of obfuscation collectively intimate that something truly exceptional was, in fact, sequestered. Perhaps the intrinsic value lies not so much in the physical artifacts themselves, but rather in the underlying motivation, a steadfast commitment to safeguarding an ancestral line, a body of wisdom, or a ceremonial practice that cannot be openly acknowledged. One retreats from the mental image of the vault, the surrounding hills now hushed, the river gently murmuring in close proximity. Within their discreet hiddenness, These subterranean chambers, whether factual or conceptual, epitomize the persistence of confidentiality, the fortitude of their custodians, and the soft intimation of a genealogical thread that steadfastly resists disappearance. Venturing past the hills, one meanders into an open space where the sun's rays once sharply penetrated the overhead foliage, now diffused into a gentle, mottled golden glow. Within this area, one discerns the subtle vestiges of bygone activities, carefully placed stone indicators, eroded pathways, and slight indentations in the earth that suggest assemblies which were simultaneously grave and clandestine. Should the Templars have indeed bequeathed any indication of their presence in the New World, it would likely manifest in such subtle expressions: sigils imprinted upon softened wax, blades reposing on timber stands, and a profound quietude upheld with the exactitude of a sacred rite. In a factual sense, medieval sigils held paramount importance for establishing veracity, serving to validate official papers, formal agreements, and solemn pledges. Knights and various monastic fraternities depended upon these as their personal endorsements, offering concrete evidence of their power. Fringe theories propose that certain descendants of the Templars in the Americas maintained these ancient customs, applying their distinctive seals to correspondence, receptacles for relics, and even designated ceremonial areas. Mainstream historical scholars frequently disregard these assertions, contending that any extant seals are of European origin and that any purported evidence found in the New World is either accidental or subject to misinterpretation. Nevertheless, the recurring motif of delicate symbols reminiscent of European heritage cannot be wholly dismissed. The atmosphere carries the fragrance of sun-warmed soil and the diminishing scent of pine, interspersed with the sharp, metallic odor of corroded iron. It is conceivable that bladed weapons were positioned here during solemn rites, either for ceremonial purposes or merely as cherished mementos. Their edges are now abraded, their sharpness blunted by the passage of time and repeated application, their former luster diminished. Despite this, they nonetheless preserve the inherent gravitas of their provenance. A portion of these instruments might have served utilitarian functions, while others were purely emblematic, an intricate fusion of safeguarding and spiritual commitment, where the martial and the mystical were intricately interwoven. A strand of humor weaves through the visual tapestry. One can readily visualize a knight meticulously burnishing a sword with grave earnestness, only for an inquisitive fox to suddenly seize a leather gauntlet, initiating a pursuit across the open space that blends reverent ceremony with outright absurdity. Even the protectors of hallowed rituals were subject to the unpredictable influences of wildlife, atmospheric conditions, and human fallibility. History, it would appear, harbors an equal fondness for sardonic twists of fate. A contingent of speculative academics posits that these pathways correspond with astronomical indicators, reflecting ancient European geometric principles. Conversely, conventional historians firmly assert that such configurations are merely fortuitous or organically occurring. Nevertheless, the discernible exactitude, delicate nuance, and meticulous attention evident strongly imply deliberate purpose, an obscured structure underlying the ostensible disarray of the untamed landscape. The rough surface of tree bark, the refreshing moisture of the earth, and the sporadic brush of a small branch against one's skin all function as tangible evocations of past existence and transit through the area. The perambulations are at once literal and metaphorical, tangible proof of journeys undertaken and the enduring symbolic impression of heritage and ceremonial practice spanning continents and epochs. A deep irony pervades this quietude. The descendants of an ancient brotherhood renowned for constructing formidable fortresses and formidable strongholds now find their very existence contingent upon discretion, the vastness of the untamed wilderness, and a profound sense of impermanence. Genuine resilience endures not through the solidity of defensive ramparts, but rather through a strategic invisibility, an unyielding patience, and the meticulously preserved subtle reverberation of each step taken. One instinctively pauses, lending an attentive ear to the forest's own hushed confidences, conjuring visions of the myriad secrets it meticulously guards, the clandestine expeditions it has witnessed, the silent protectors who traverse its depths, and the ancestral bloodlines that move through its shadows, entirely unobserved. Within every delicate indentation upon the earth, in each deliberate arrangement of ancient stones, the Templar's enduring heritage continues to murmur, a soft yet tenacious testament to the profound art of survival, the virtue of discretion, and a quiet, unwavering devotion. Ultimately, the expedition reaches a prominent hilltop where primeval stones emerge from the very soil, standing sentinel like the mute chroniclers of millennia. Each individual rock is imbued with its own narrative. Some are delicately etched with symbols so faint as to be almost imperceptible, while others bear the distinct marks of hands that vanished into history ages ago. Here, the very topography articulates a lexicon more ancient than spoken words, a profound idiom composed of shifting shadows, precise angles, and varied textures. The visitors carefully trace their digits along the weathered carvings, sensing the grooves that have been worn smooth by the relentless caress of wind, the persistent deluge of rain, and the occasional inquisitive touch of a passing hand. From a factual standpoint, indigenous North American and early colonial stone formations are abundantly distributed across the Americas, ranging from unadorned cairns to remarkably intricate geometric configurations. Certain speculative theories postulate that a subset of these locations exhibit an influence stemming from Templar descendants who allegedly integrated European esoteric emblems alongside existing indigenous motifs. Academic scholars, however, maintain a posture of skepticism, frequently citing the high probability of mere coincidence or the independent evolution of similar practices. Nevertheless, the recurring patterns are undeniably captivating: celestial bodies, cruciform shapes, and circular motifs positioned with apparent intention, collectively forming a clandestine lexicon. The atmosphere is redolent with the scent of sun-warmed stone, damp moss, and parched earth. A gentle zephyr carries the distant, melodic calls of birds, orchestrating a soft, evolving auditory tapestry as one's gaze drifts from one stone to the next. Conceivably, a cryptic message still awaits discovery by those possessing sufficient attentiveness, a subtle indicator of bloodline, a mnemonic device for ancient rites, a hushed communication spanning multiple centuries. One can readily envision Templars kneeling reverently at this very spot, their hands pressed firmly against the stone, articulating solemn oaths that function simultaneously as pledges and as fervent supplications. A thread of subtle humor weaves its way through the contemplative scene. One might imagine a less patient apprentice impatiently tapping a slightly misaligned stone and grumbling, "Even the Almighty would have rectified. that while a vigilant squirrel observes the interaction with an expression of palpable disapproval. Here, the sacred and the mundane coexist in perfect, unforced harmony. Some proponents of fringe theories propose that these stone alignments ingeniously encode astronomical data, specific temporal markers, or the precise coordinates of concealed locations, an ancient old-world methodology ingeniously adapted for application in the New World. Mainstream historians, conversely, issue a cautionary note against excessive interpretation, emphasizing that both natural geological formations and practical utilitarian arrangements frequently give rise to seemingly deliberate patterns. Yet, an undeniable, strange resonance emanates from this place. The sense of human intentionality appears almost tangible, suggesting an ongoing silent dialogue between human craftsmanship and the enduring, immutable rock. Tactile sensations predominantly shape one's perception: the ruggedness of granite, the silken smoothness of limestone, and the occasional, unexpected softness of moss beneath probing fingertips. Shadows fluidly shift in accordance with the sun's trajectory, and angles subtly align with distant mountain peaks, meandering rivers, or significant celestial beacons. Each individual stone functions as a single word. Each intricate alignment constitutes a complete sentence, together composing a monumental manuscript inscribed not on fragile parchment, but within the timeless medium of earth and sky. Irony subtly persists. The grand, sweeping narratives of conquest, audacious discovery, and sprawling empire seem to diminish into insignificance when juxtaposed with the quiet, unyielding endurance of stone. Secrets are never proclaimed loudly. Instead, they are delicately impressed into surfaces, rendered subtle, almost imperceptible, patiently awaiting the discerning gaze of eyes that perceive without requiring explicit declaration. Some historians continue to debate the very existence of European influence at these sites, while others discern parallels that are simply too precise and deliberate to be easily dismissed. Perhaps the underlying intention holds greater significance than irrefutable proof: the profound concept that secrecy, unwavering devotion, and profound knowledge can persist quietly, almost imperceptibly, across the vast expanse of time and varied terrain. The observers gently retreat, allowing the hilltop and its silent stone sentinels to embed themselves deeply within their memory. The daylight gradually recedes, shadows elongate dramatically, and a profound hush descends upon the entire landscape. Within the intricate grooves, the precise angles, and the mute presence of the stones, the Templar's whispers continue to resonate, carried forward in the eternal, enduring language of stone itself. Night has now fully enveloped the valleys, the winding rivers, and the rolling hills that the journeyers have traversed, and the world seems to exhale a soft, profound sigh. The group settles together on the gentle incline of a verdant meadow. Above, the stars are strewn across the inky canvas like countless silver coins, each one a silent, luminous reminder of the cosmic immensity that cradles all concealed truths. The air is refreshingly cool, subtly perfumed with the faint aroma of pine, damp earth, and the delicate sweetness of nocturnal blossoms that unfurl their petals exclusively under the moon's ethereal glow. Every ambient sound, the delicate rustle of leaves, the distant, soft splash of water, the whispering caress of wind over stone, transforms into a soothing lullaby, a gentle, rhythmic accompaniment to the intricate narratives that have been meticulously traced throughout the evening. They recall the modest chapel devoid of a name, where the interplay of deep shadows and flickering candlelight bore silent witness to an ancient lineage carefully preserved within unpretentious timber. They also remember the elusive rose line, stretching imperceptibly across vast continents, subtly guiding footsteps, both human and spectral, forging an unbreakable link between the old world of Europe and the burgeoning New World. Subterranean vaults concealed beneath hills, seals meticulously pressed into warm wax, swords respectfully laid in deliberate repose, and the ethereal image of a bride arrayed in white and gold. All these now resonate not as audible sounds, but as a profound echo within the quietude of imagination, a soft, persistent vibration of memory that lingers long after the world has succumbed to sleep. The boundless ocean beyond the charted maps, the hidden meandering river paths, and the careful, almost imperceptible footprints left in the forest undergrowth, all eloquently speak of an unwavering patience, an exquisite subtlety, and an enduring tenacity. Even the pontiff's quill, held with palpable unease and deliberate intent, serves as a poignant reminder that some stories are best preserved through judicious restraint, through the profound wisdom of knowing precisely what to commit to writing and what to wisely leave unarticulated. The true legacy of the Templars is not quantifiable by grand monuments or ostentatious displays, but rather by the subtle whispers, the ephemeral shadows, and the profound, quiet devotion that effortlessly bridges centuries. One's imagination drifts to tracing the profound language of stone one final time. Fingers glide gently over grooves smoothed by the relentless passage of wind and rain, over intricate carvings that communicate through the precise eloquence of geometry, the interplay of shadow, and the nuanced variations of texture. Each deliberate alignment, each minute mark, functions as a distinct word, a coherent phrase, a cryptic message inscribed not for the indiscriminate many, but exclusively for the discerning, observant few. A gentle humor subtly emerges in the collective consciousness. A scurrying squirrel, a fleeting fox, a sudden gust of wind, each quietly disrupts the prevailing solemnity, yet simultaneously serves to remind observers that even the most hallowed traditions must invariably contend with the gentle, inherent absurdities of everyday existence. And now, as one's eyes gently close, the intricate threads of history, ancient legend, and vivid imagination seamlessly interweave. One can almost feel the palpable presence of the silent keepers, the hidden voyagers, the steadfast guardians of sacred relics and solemn oaths. Their subtle whispers gently settle upon the listener, akin to a soothing lullaby, imparting the profound wisdom that patience, careful discretion, and quiet reverence are, in truth, the most enduring vessels of survival. The past is by no means lost. It quietly lingers in shadowed corners, in subtle, intentional alignments, embedded within the very stone and soil, patiently awaiting discovery by attentive hearts. The natural world exhales once more, a breath deeper and more languid. The observer's own respirations align with the nocturnal rhythm, the gentle, pervasive pulse of earth, water, and wind. Secrets undeniably survive in silence. Stories travel through hushed whispers, and ancestral bloodlines endure not through public spectacle, but through meticulous care, profound subtlety, and a devotion that never seeks external commendation. Tonight, these profound lessons are carried within the soft folds of imagination, allowing them to settle around the observers like a comforting, warm blanket. heavy with the weight of memory and light with the boundless wonder of discovery. Sleep now inexorably draws near, bringing with it the distant echo of footsteps, the soft murmur of meandering rivers, the profound hush of ancient vaults, and the gentle, pervasive hum of stones and celestial bodies. The mind is encouraged to drift along unseen paths, through the solemn quietude of shadowed chapels, across rivers that remain unobserved, and into the quiet, profound wisdom of history, whispered softly into the vast expanse of the night.